All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining in. Let's wait for 5 minutes before we get started. Let's wait for folks to join in.
Hey, Steve. Hey, Vijay.
Hey, Aniket. Hi, Steve.
Hi. I'm excited to be presenting today.
We're excited as well. Just want to make sure the audio for all of us is okay.
Yeah. I think we're good.
All right. Yeah. Perfect.
All right, people joining in. Let's wait for a couple of more minutes, folks. All right, I think we have everybody here. Let's get started. Thank you for joining in, everyone. Let's get started. Let me get the introductions in order. Let me start by introducing our panelists. We have with us Steve Silver, who's the VP Principal Analyst at Forrester, and we have with us Aniket Kodre as well, who's the Head of Strategic Accounts at Demand Farm. Welcome to the webinar, folks. Thank you for joining in today. Can we just get a quick round of introductions going? Steve, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely, BJ. Pleasure to see you both again. So, as you said, I'm Steve Silver. I'm with Forrester. I'm a principal analyst in our sales and revenue operations practice. Been with Forrester now almost 11 years, so quite some time. But prior to that, I spent the last 20 plus years as a sales operations, revenue operations practitioner. And during my time focused on sales ops, revenue operations, I had a particular focus on key account management, account planning, opportunity management, sales methodologies, and the technology that supports those practices. So very excited to have this conversation today.
That's amazing, Steve. Super excited to have you here. Aniket, yeah, over to you.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. Aniket Kothre, head the customer success and strategic accounts at Demand Farm. I've been a seller and a customer success leader for almost 8 years now. And one thing I realize is I've been giving an ear to every account manager that I talk to, and I understand what their challenges are. From sales methodologies to sales tech tools that they're using. And I've been trying to be a problem solver for their lives. In that pursuit, I've also started working very closely with some accounts, strategic accounts at Demand Farm, which made me realize that the topic for a webinar today is so important for some of the organizations which are trying to take their organization to the next level. And hence I'm here to add whatever I can from my experience. Thank you. Thanks, Vijay, for having me.
Fantastic. You're the right guy for the webinar, Aniket. Yeah. With that said, let's just run through the topic. Today's webinar is about this topic: scaling KAM best practices by engineering repeatability for revenue expansion. Right. And before we dive into the session, let's just get the housekeeping in order. So there's going to be a 1 hour session. We're going to be recording it, so you would be getting the recording post-webinar in your inboxes. There's a chat window to your right bottom corner. You would be able to post your questions. We have somebody to answer your questions throughout the session, so please feel free to participate, to ask questions that you might have, and we would love to answer as many questions as possible. And we peppered the webinar with some polls, quick fire polls. So you would find that interesting. And these polls are important because it's going to help us understand where you are with your journey, and it's also going to help us give you the right insights, if I can put it that way. So the agenda is going to look like this. It's divided into 6 topics. We start with the impact that key accounts have on revenues of enterprises such as yours. Then we go into why you should be focusing on repeatability in KAM best practices, and why now specifically, and what are the challenges when you're going to do that. Steve is dipping into his vast years of experience, and Aniket's also going to talk a lot about his experiences with customer implementations on this particular topic. And then we're going to go and look at how an ideal KAM solution will look like. And Steve has an interesting 4P model up his sleeve. I'm really looking forward to hearing about that. And we're also going to be talking about the tracking part, because we want to close the loop there, which is an Achilles heel, right? And you want to understand how you want to measure impact of the KAM program and the process and the ROI as well. And then we're going to finish it off by giving you a few factors that influence repeatability of KAM best practices. With that said, without further ado, let's jump in over to Steve. Steve, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, BJ. So I thought we'd start out by talking about why this is so important, why we're having this conversation, hopefully why you're listening to this webinar. And it's because key accounts, or whether you call them strategic accounts or named accounts or large accounts, are critically important to the success and long-term growth of your organization. In fact, as you can see, key accounts often represent anywhere from 30 to 50% of your revenue and your margin. So taking care of those accounts, growing those accounts, it cannot be left to chance or good luck or wishful thinking. In fact, I was working with one of our clients just a few years ago. This is a $2 billion technology company. And when we really dug into their revenue stream and did some analysis, we found that about 75%, $1.5 billion of their revenue came from 130 accounts, a very narrow section of the over 2,000 customers that they had. And those 130 accounts were heavily concentrated in finance, in healthcare, and in telecom, all of which were and are going through major changes with emerging competitors, new regulations, changing technology, et cetera. So this particular organization, after we did this analysis, realized that it was an absolute requirement that they both retain those 130 key accounts, but that they develop a deep understanding of those accounts so they could go find more of them, more accounts with that high lifetime value, a propensity to become and remain clients, and they wanted to diversify a little bit into some adjacent verticals. So, hopefully that talks about why this is so important. And BJ, if you can go to the next slide. I thought I'd emphasize just a little bit, when we ask C-level executives what actions they're taking to grow revenue, it's really clear that they are already keenly aware of and focused on these key accounts. In fact, 5 of the top actions that they cited are really directly influenced by the steps we can take to identify, to acquire, retain, and grow those key accounts. And the effectiveness of each one of these individual actions can be improved through an effective key account program. So let's go to the next slide, please. So if we agree that key account management is important and it's worth doing, then I think all of us can agree that it's worth doing well, or it's worth doing right. And that means putting together a repeatable, standardized process for planning and managing and interacting and retaining these key accounts. Not doing this, not having that repeatable best practice, really opens you up to some negative consequences that you can see here. I'm constantly astonished at how many large successful organizations still leave this account planning and account management process up to the individual regions or the individual sales leaders, sometimes even the individual sales managers. And they're often building these plans using Word or PowerPoint, which means the reps are spending a lot of time manually creating data, manually entering, manually creating plans and data that frankly then sit on a shelf and they're not kept up to date. And honestly, it's a waste of time and energy for the sellers, for their managers, and it doesn't really add much value for your customers, for those key accounts. So having this repeatable process can help both the company and the sales organization and even the individual sellers prepare for things like economic uncertainty, which is certainly the case in our current environment, new competitors that are emerging for you or for your customers, and changes that are taking place in your target industries and accounts. These might be regulatory changes. They might be new technologies that are impacting them. But accounts will come and go, and having this standard repeatable plan, it's really critical that you take the time to understand your customers. Things like what's happening with their finances. Are they growing? Are they profitable? Are they about to be acquired? Are they subject to emerging competitors? And doing that analysis is not only a best practice for key account management, but it starts to position you, the seller, as a trusted advisor to your customers, someone who brings expertise and knowledge that actually helps them improve their performance. Let's go to the next slide and start to get into how you can do some of this.
Yeah. Aniket, can I just invite you to shed light
Yeah,
on this?
Sure. I think in my experience working with almost thousands of account managers and hundreds of companies, what I've seen is that the fundamental problem with making this repeatable is your consistency in terms of how you're driving it and how efficient is your account planning program. And this ties back to, what kind of data do you have access to? If your customer data is still in silos, you have multiple systems, CRMs, ERPs, plans are lying in Excel or PowerPoints, it's always going to be reviewed in silos and updated in silos. Your account plan creation isn't a process-driven exercise. It's a wishful thinking, as I think earlier when Steve spoke about, right? The key problem is people are doing account planning more like a wishful thinking that I have something to do in the plan today and I'm doing it in isolation. And that's why every plan looks different. Everyone has a different plan for the same customer. And then planning is more reactive because I'm tackling a problem only on my side. I know the problems which are related to my role and my plan and my strategy. And I'm tackling with that problem very reactively and not like a team. And that's why these static plans are evolving with the changes that are happening, not just on your side, but also on the customer side. So you will see so many changes happening in your account, and the way you are reacting to these changes is not making this entire process repeatable. So that's why it's very difficult for a lot of organizations that I've worked with. They come with a very, I want to use this word, very heartbroken with how they are functioning as an organization, and they want to fix this problem. But everyone has a problem of their own. They are not coming as an organization and saying that this is a problem that we want to solve. So this is, scalability and how you want to look at this problem is very important.
All right. Quick question there. I see one of these questions that popped up. I don't want to name call the companies or different companies that have joined, but there are different industries that are watching or consuming this particular webinar. And is this challenge uniform for all the industries? What is the nature? How does it change according to the industry or the segment? This is a question for both of you.
So I'll go first, and I'll say, we have over 2,000 clients at Forrester in everything from high tech to manufacturing to healthcare to finance to government. And I can't think of a single industry where key account management is not critically important, right? anybody who's in business to business sales is going to have those accounts that are your customers are going through change. They're evolving, they're growing, they're doing all the things that Aniket just described. And I think it's just critically important for selling organizations to have a deep understanding of those customers, what's happening to them, and be prepared to adapt to those changes. So I don't see anywhere where this wouldn't be applicable.
Yeah. Do any of these challenges are more pronounced for any specific industry, or are there any other challenges that you would want to surface up for, let's say, consulting or logistics companies? We see a lot of interest from logistics and several non software industries coming up, and I was just curious about that as well.
I can go on this one. So Vijay, in my experience, no matter what industry and what size of an organization you are, you always land that dream customer, an enterprise customer that you want to grow. And if you don't have this process, if you're not thinking about this is more like a wild goose chase without a geese. You are simply going after something without a plan, without a strategy, and you have a lot of heads going after it, but all of them are headless chickens. They have their own strategy, and it's not consolidated into a one single strategy. So I think it doesn't matter what industry it is or what size of an organization it is. Everyone has a key customer. Everyone wants to grow their key customers.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. So what I hear is that repeatability in the best practices isn't just about a possibility that we explore. It's a necessity today, right? And it's imperative that you do find a way to identify what your best practices are, and you find a way to repeat that at scale. And which takes me to the next slide, which kind of correlates repeatability and growth. So both of these are directly proportional, and that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the presentation as well, where we're going to be looking at what KAM means for different stakeholders. Steve, over to you.
Yeah, I mentioned this in my introduction that the why we do these things. And I think when I work with organizations on setting up or maybe improving a key account management program, I often start the conversation with why. Specifically, why are they considering investing in a program like this? What outcomes are they hoping to achieve? And hopefully they have answers. Sometimes they don't really, but if we get to answers, it helps us determine just how serious they are and how realistic their objectives are. So coming back to this document also becomes a guidepost throughout the process that we can return to if we start to deviate from achieving those goals. So to help people who are implementing a key account management program think through that why question, I typically use a pretty simple chart like you can see here. At the top on that first row in the darker color, we list the stakeholders. Now, this is just an example. So your stakeholders might include other internal organizations. It might include partners. It might include your customers. But we want to list out who's really involved in this program. And then that next line, we're going to list the attributes. What are the things that we want to improve or affect through the implementation of a key account management program? So just to look at, for example, the attributes that would impact C-suite and decision makers might include things like retaining and growing our key accounts, achieving revenue and margin goals, greater alignment between sales, marketing, and customer success, improving customer satisfaction, improving customer participation, right? So we can describe the attributes. Those are the positive impacts we're trying to achieve. Then that last row is focused on the measures. How will we measure the impact? And so here we're thinking about retention rates, win rates, revenue, profitability, margin, net promoter scores, things that we can attach a number to and say, by implementing a key account management program, we want to improve revenue from these accounts from X to Y by the end of the year, or the end of the fiscal year. Now, this helps us think through, but the one question you have to ask yourself when you're putting this together is, can we actually measure these things? Can we measure customer satisfaction scores? Can we measure share of wallet? And if we can, do we have a baseline for those? And then can we track improvements? So, as you're putting this little chart together, you've got to be thinking about not just what do we want to achieve, but how can we measure the impact of this program. So let's go to the next slide. Once we understand those sort of desired outcomes, we can talk about standardizing these best practices. And again, this comes back to all the reasons that BJ talked about earlier. We're trying to get to a repeatable outcome here. And that means documenting those best practices and propagating them or standardizing them across the entire organization. This is sort of the how. And how you build this key account program that delivers value for your customers, your organization, and you as individual sellers begins with sort of an outside-in view, meaning you focus on your prospects and your customers both as an organization and as individuals. So on the left most box, we talk about understanding your customers and really developing a deep understanding of them. What's their business model? What are their goals? How do those goals turn into initiatives that you can then apply your products and your services and your solutions to? So if, for example, you're selling to a data services company or, and they say, oh, we're going to open or build a data warehouse in Singapore, or a data center in Singapore. Well, that might be a trigger for your particular product or solution to say, hey, we can help with that, or we can make that faster or better, or our equipment should be part of that data center. So you start this key account management program by developing a deep understanding of your prospects and customers. And then the next column, you have to understand the individuals, the buyers and the users within those customers. And again, this is more than just their name, their title, and their role in the buying decision. It's really understanding what are their personal goals, what are their objectives, how are they compensated. And by the way, just as a little sidebar, that's a great question for you as a seller to ask one of your buyers. Well, how does this impact your compensation, or how are you rewarded, or how are you measured? And that's going to give you a pretty strong indicator of how important this particular project or this particular solution is to them. You also have to understand who they're connected to, what their decision orientation is. Is it technical? Is it financial? Is it something else? So, building that understanding of the individual buyers and users within your account is critically important. And then finally, taking all that knowledge, putting it into a plan in a way that is useful for the individual seller, is useful for the manager, is useful for your internal partners, whether that's sales engineering, whether it's C-level executives, customer success, but also useful for your external partners. And here I'm thinking of both your go-to-market partners, resellers, distributors, value-added resellers, strategic partners, but also with potentially your customers can be an external partner. If you've got a champion, we often see a best practice of reviewing your account plan with that champion to get their feedback on whether that meets the needs that they were expecting.
All right, cool. Thanks for that, Steve. We'll quickly probably pull up a poll here. You would see this on your screens. What tools are you using to manage your KAM today? Right? Steve spoke at length about number of factors, challenges, and finally talking about the measures, attributes. But we want to understand what tools are you using to manage your camp today. Are you using any tool, or do you use it? Do you probably manage your process using PPTs and your CRM, right? How exactly do you manage your camp today, right? I'll give you probably 10 seconds to get your words in, folks. We'll quickly go back to the presentation. I do have an interesting question for Steve. I'm playing the devil's advocate here, picking all the difficult questions. So what happens when an organization is not probably mature enough, or they're still quite early with their CAM process, that it's very hard to put in place some of those measures and attributes? What is an easy option that you would suggest to get started with?
So if they can't come up with the appropriate attributes and measures?
Correct.
Yeah. I think you always have to consider this and start with your customer first, right?
Yeah.
What does your organization bring to the table? How are you helping your customers achieve their business objectives? And then how can you do more of that? I mean, obviously, when we're talking about C-level executives in our company, we want to focus on our company objectives, revenue growth, share of wallet, increased win rate. But I think you've always got a position, well, I know we want that, but what do our customers want? And how does meeting their needs help us achieve our goals? And it's that outside-in perspective that really should influence those attributes and measures.
All right. Cool. Thanks, Steve. All right, let's close the poll and let's move on. That brings us to the core of the presentation today, which is how does the ideal CAM solution look like? And Aniket, I think you have a lot of expertise here. Over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Vijay. I was just thinking about a very recent conversation with a customer of ours. They're a size of 90 employees and have close to about 38 applications, if I'm not wrong, running in their organization, almost half the size of their strength. And that's a realization that almost every customer that we talk to, they have, keeping the CRMs and ERPs aside, they have at least 40 applications running today. Most of them are capturing customer data. So that's how the world has changed. And everyone is trying to ride the wave of AI now. So every app that you're working with, they're talking about AI. Back in those days, Steve, if you can add here, when CRMs were launched and data was scattered inside Excel sheets and paper napkins or notebooks, it was a transformation. It was an aha moment for every organization when they got a CRM. And then ABMs happened. And then we had tools like Gong and Salesloft that started transforming revenue operations. So it's every step where you're looking at tools which started creating categories. There was an aha moment where the organizations felt that this is digitizing, this is scaling, and this is empowering us. I'll take a pause here, Steve, if you would like to add something to this.
Well, I'm smiling because when you mentioned the average organization has 40 sales tools, I've seen organizations with way more than that. And, it's kind of a good news, bad news story here. I think the good news is we finally have sales tools, sales technology that actually helps the seller do things, right? Automates manual processes, develops insights for them, gives them next best step recommendations. The bad news is that data is often scattered amongst many different platforms. It's collecting data on personal interactions, digital interactions. Getting all that data into a place where we can conduct analysis, where those AI tools can actually be looking at a valid set, a large enough set of data to give us reasonable recommendations, that's the challenge. And I think that's something where a good key account management solution can actually help.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk about the next layer because when I spoke about the ABMs and Gongs of the world, a lot of conversational data, a lot of your opportunities data is getting captured in these tools. Mm-hmm. But is that enabling your sellers? Is that data still remaining as a silo within these systems? And that's what we are trying to address, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I see is if you're looking at growing into an account, you must be doing white space analysis. But there is already so much data inside your CRM that you can enable your sellers or account managers to identify the right focus areas rather than spending into areas where they shouldn't, and they're not going to see much success there. You have buyer intent data, you have insights in terms of what the customer has been buying for the past 5 years and so on. All of this data is lying inside your CRM and tools. And then there is so much in terms of your relationships and your engagement that you have with your customer contacts. There must be at least 10 apps that you're using, which are just enabling you to have the right contacts, right stakeholders in CRM. And then who should you target? So if you're managing your key stakeholders, one of the very important things is planning for relationships ahead of time, maybe at a quarterly level or an annual strategy in terms of this is what you want to achieve from a relationship standpoint. And then do you have a plan in mind in terms of how do you want to strategize for this account? What are the steps that you want to take in every month, every quarter in order to execute your strategy, your goal for the year? So that's a structured plan that you design for your account managers and have some consistency in that plan so that you know what strategy is working for you as an organization, what's helping you win more business in your strategic accounts and what's not working. So a very important skill that I've learned recently is that you have to shed processes which don't work for you, shed things that are not working for you, and just adapt to things that are working for you. So if you have a standardized, structured account planning process, you will know what's worked for you and what's not worked for you, and just continue doing what's working for you. And lastly, the opportunity planning, I think very important part. If you have processes or tools which are funneling into your pipeline, which are funneling into your win rates, your conversions, your average deal sizes, that is something that is always going to be on priority for every organization that I talk to. So these are 4 layers of 4 things that everyone is conscious of when it comes to a KAM solution, and that's what a KAM solution should have. If we talk about the 4th layer, is it's written tracking and reporting, but let me call it coaching. It's basically meant for your reviewers or your sales managers to help you coach in terms of how are you running the business, how are you achieving your numbers, how are you targeting the customer in terms of increase in pipeline. The sales managers have a complete visibility into all the accounts that are in their portfolio. And they have the ability to coach you in terms of, cross-functional, cross-pollinated data of this is what has worked in this particular account in the same industry, and why don't you try doing this? That's how we expect most of our users, our sales managers, to coach their account managers. And then lastly, the system, now it's capturing so much of intelligence from CRMs to the sales conversation tools to APMs and so on, plus the account planning data that you've entered inside the tool. Now, all of this can combine into giving you some insights, valuable insights in terms of what should be a next best action, or have you missed an opportunity? These are signs based on clear rule-based engine that at Demand Farm, at least we've created a rule-based engine which generates insights and nudges for users to take action. So I think that completes the circle in terms of what an ideal KAM solution looks like.
Yeah. If I may add there, probably with the vast landscape of tools available in the market, probably Demand Farm is one of the few tools that cover all these 3 areas, right? White space, relationship, and opportunity planning, end to end, the whole spectrum. So that's probably something that the enterprises tuned in, should probably keep in mind when they're evaluating solutions. What exactly is your primary area and which one you want to solve for? And does the tool actually provide enough solutioning there in that area? All right, so time for a quick poll again. What exactly are the challenges that you're looking to fix in 2024? What are your priorities? You see a few options there based on the previous slide. We'd love to understand what are you trying to solve today. All right, we're getting the votes in. Cool. I think let's close the poll and let's move on. Yeah, Aniket, can we kind of double click on the insights layer? I think that's really interesting and something that enterprises, mid market, different industries are going to find it super useful.
Sure. I think when we started thinking about insights and how we can give some valuable, inputs to our account managers who are using the tool for account planning, we stumbled upon certain priorities that we had to choose and build insights for. Now, clearly, everyone wants to make sure that the churn rates and they're not losing business. You don't have a leaky bucket in any of their strategic accounts. So that's one place where we are trying to give insights to the users that this is where you might lose business. This engagement of this project that you're running, this is still in red because of these three factors, giving clear evidence in terms of why we think it is in red. Or if you're trying to push certain opportunities from one stage to other, have you missed an action? Is there an obvious action that we have seen in some of your other opportunities that you've taken and that have helped you move the opportunity from one stage to other faster? So some of these things that the system is learning automatically, that's what we are trying to conduct inside the application. How it's helping us is we are now combining a lot of insights, not just related to account planning or related to demand farm, but we are also pulling in some cross-pollinated data from tools like Kong, or if you're using Salesloft or any other tools which within Salesforce or even outside Salesforce, which are giving you some of these insights. How can we combine them? How can we put them in the context of an account plan, or help the users in terms of improving their strategy or taking action in certain areas that they haven't taken action in? So that's how we're looking at insights. We're trying to build a very fact-based, rule-based insight, which is clear with evidence that this is why you need to take this action, because these are the three things that have happened. Unlike most, AI tools, someone's very recently said this to me, that a lot of these AI tools that are emerging in the market, sometimes people are not really taking the inputs or the outcomes from these AI tools, is because it's very generic. It's not contextual to your business or to your account or to the data that you have inside of your CRM. So that's why we are trying to ride the AI wave, but with a lot of factual data inside of your account, inside the tools that they're using. It's very data-driven insight that we are generating for account managers.
Yeah. All right.
I just have a question for Steve here. Stephen, in your experience, do you think this makes sense? How does AI play a role in account planning tools, especially when the data is so sensitive? Nobody wants to share the data for their accounts and their plans and strategies, right?
Yeah.
So what's your take on that?
So first of all, I think we're at the very beginning of what AI can and will do, especially some of the the generative AI, the natural language processing tools. I would say there's two key areas right now that you've already touched on. One is the ability to gather all of that disparate data that today lives in silos, some of it structured, some of it unstructured, to pull that together and to conduct analysis on that data, right? And help us understand what are our buyer behaviors, what are our customer behaviors, what components are they using, what are they not using, what are the triggers that show us that there is an active buying cycle in motion. So that's one. And the second big one is then our ability to interact with that data in new and interesting ways. Natural language processing, asking the data, hey, what are the key trends that I should be looking for? What are the things that drive a winning sales opportunity? What goals does this particular client have, and how does that turn into initiatives that we can help them with? So I think it's taking that data and it's making it available to us in ways that we're really just beginning to explore. And for me, that's what's so exciting about AI in this area.
Okay, thank you.
All right, folks. Let's move on. So I think, yeah, Steve. I think
Yeah.
maybe you should just continue about the implementation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we wanted to talk about implementation for a moment, because it's one thing to talk about all the wonderful benefits from the technology and the key account management programs and the new capabilities of these tools. But if nobody's using it, you're not going to get those benefits. So as you're evaluating or reevaluating a potential provider, you really have to think through, how are we going to roll this out to the sales organization? How are we going to promote adoption and use? And then how are we going to measure that value? And we'll talk about measurement in just a moment here. But the first thing I would say is make sure you choose a provider, a solution provider, who is willing to talk to you about implementation and change management before you sign the contract. You really want to work with someone who understands what it takes to roll this out to your sales organization. I'm a huge fan of pilot programs, whether it's key account management or really any other tool or process that you're rolling out. Start with a small group of reps, sort of a control group, capture their feedback, get them engaged, celebrate those early wins. They can then become your champions, your subject matter experts when you start with a broader rollout. Promote, you've got to celebrate those positive results. You've got to push. You've got to work with a sense of urgency, even though you may not see the benefits for quite some time. You've still got to keep the momentum going. And finally, I think a lot of this comes back to embedding these objectives in their performance for the year. And I'm not talking about saying, oh, you have to create an account plan. I'm talking about connecting quota, acquisition targets, retention targets to what they're actually putting into the account plan. And so when we talk about metrics, you'll see some ways to actually do that.
Yeah. Is there a one-size-fits-all for a pilot program? And this question is for both Steve and Aniket, because I know Aniket's also worked with a lot of pilots, and depending on the size of the company and again the segment.
I think
Of the pilot and what are the expectations out of it. I know it's a slippery wicket here, but I'm sure people would want to understand. I'm asking on behalf of all the different enterprises who joined.
No, from whatever I've read, the psyche of the pilot or the POC request that I had from the customers, I think they know exactly why they're doing the pilot, but they have not jotted down or written down the objectives daily. That what is it that we need to achieve in order to say that this pilot was successful or not successful. Ease of use or aligning with your existing sales methodologies or an account planning tool, which is good enough for me to do both. Users are liking to use it, and it has its own embedded account planning process or framework, which is good for me as an organization. I think these are some of the objectives that customers come to us with. But in my experience, what I've seen is if you are capping your POCs and pilots for, let's say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks and keep a very focused amount of time with the rigor that this is what we need to achieve, these are some of the objectives, then you will always have a completion. I'm not saying that whether the POC is successful or not successful, but you will definitely have a completed POC with a clear result that this is what we are trying to achieve in this pilot, and hence this POC is successful or not successful. Mm-hmm. If you're keeping this on and on for 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months, there's a very good chance that the people who are participating in this POC, they have other things to do. They have KRAs to achieve, and they don't have an undivided attention, and neither does your executive sponsor or somebody who's willing to promote this POC. They will have excitement about running this POC in the week 1 or week 2, and after that it starts fading away because it becomes just another project that they're running in their organization. So I think key inputs from my side: try and keep it shorter and have clear objectives that you want to achieve from a POC.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Aniket. I think the one piece of advice I would have is when you're doing a pilot, you have to approach it with an open mind. If you're going to ask key account managers to participate in this, you're asking them to give you feedback. You better be prepared as a head of sales or revenue operations to take that feedback, to actively collect it and to use it to improve the program when you finally roll it out. And don't just, set that feedback aside, set their concerns aside and roll it out anyway. It's got to be integrated into the program.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for those insights. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Aniket, this is right up your alley.
Yeah, this is one of the recent implementations that we're driving with one of our customers, where in most cases what we have seen is when our customers come to us, they either have an existing account planning process, or they at least have thought of how they want to run their account planning programs. So when they come to us, they're trying to get this tool up and running with minimum resistance and make sure that none of their existing intel on the account or the plans that people have created that's lost. So hence, one of the first steps that we undertake is creating a migration plan of whatever tools or sources where these plans are going to come from. And then we help them migrate the entire account planning process, or any existing account plans that they've created, help them migrate them onto the platform. We time it to such a way that we have clear understanding of what's going where inside the tool. From, let's say, a PowerPoint, what's going where inside the tool. And once that agreement is done, then we migrate all of the plans inside the tool. Once the plans are in, or once we know what process they're going to use, we start training the users in terms of how to interact with the account planning platform. And this is the core of our onboarding, where we're interacting with the users, we are gathering feedback in terms of if they're facing challenges, and in terms of doing a particular activity. We try to pace it in such a way that everyone is able to create their account plans in a very structured manner in groups and are collaborating in the entire process. Then the next step is also ensuring that your sales managers who are going to look at these plans and review these plans, they are trained well. They need to understand how they can help coach their account managers when they are reviewing the account plans. So we do a couple of dry runs with these sales leaders, also ensure that we're joining some of these account reviews personally to help them in terms of what are some of the coaching tricks that you can use by conducting the reviews inside the tool. And then we have the final formal account plan reviews that are planned. The first planned review is something that we target as a milestone in the entire program when it comes to implementation. And then from there on, we have clear metrics in terms of how we want to measure the impact and the ROI of the tool. There are clear signs on how you're progressing. So there's a progress on promise tracker that we have created where, let's say, for example, one of your objectives was to streamline your relationships with all of your key accounts. So where does it stand today? And then you have a benchmark of where you want to get to, what number of champions you want to identify, or what number of org charts you should have. Or if you don't have visibility into your influences, what kind of visibility have you been able to attain by this milestone? So these become milestones for us that we start tracking, and then eventually they lead to a particular quantifiable ROI that we can arrive at, maybe after a couple of quarters or maybe end of the year when we're looking at how we've been able to impact your business. So that's how typically we run implementations at Demand Farm. I also want to reiterate that this is just an example where we have assumed that there's an account planning process or there's an account plan created somewhere inside a tool or maybe in a PowerPoint. We've also seen customers who are starting from scratch. And in most cases, we have seen that there's a lot of learning and unlearning that happens in those processes as well. So migration is switched to more of education, where we are doing a lot of education even before onboarding the users or showing them the first screen inside Demand Farm. So, and it involves a lot of change management, right? Education plus change management becomes the first step in the implementation.
Yeah. Thanks for the detailed walkthrough, Maniket.
Sure.
And this is as real as it gets, folks. So this is a real implementation that we're talking about. So yeah. And we're just trying to keep it real here. Okay, yeah. I think Steve, this is your.
Yeah, I know, Anika, listening to you describe that implementation process, I know that's something that's near and dear for you and something that you focus on, especially in your role at Demand Farm. And I love seeing that measurement and ROI component on there, because it's something we talk about with our clients all the time. And we think about impact or ROI really in these three buckets, if you will, of near-term, midterm, and long-term metrics. And then you can further quantify those. Near-term are going to be more activity-based. Are they creating account plans? Are they reviewing those account plans, both with internal stakeholders and potentially with external stakeholders like partners and customers? Are they identifying new contacts, new champions? Are they getting meetings? Are they identifying white space opportunities? So those are the activities that we would typically expect to see through the implementation of a program like this. Then those midterm metrics, sort of in that 3 to 6, maybe 9 month time frame, we're going to start getting what we might call output. We're getting more of our accounts have relationship maps. We're starting to leverage those relationship maps to build interactions with those customers. We're taking some of those potential opportunities and turning them into qualified opportunities. We're identifying opportunities for cross-sell, for upsell, to increase product placement and solution placement at those clients. So the things that are leading us to the final category of metrics, which are impact. And impact metrics are tied to our sales and our corporate objectives. So these are typically going to be expressed in terms of revenue, retention, acquisition, profitability, growth, achieving sales goals, increasing customer satisfaction, loyalty, and advocacy scores. But I think that the point is, as you are implementing or maybe re-implementing a key account management program, you can start to quantify the value of the program into these three buckets of activity, output, and impact.
All right. That's a lot of metrics to consume, but I think I'll just let the folks consume the metrics. I'm pretty sure we are going to have some questions around this slide, so please do send in your questions, folks. Yeah, Aniket, I'm sorry, you had something to say.
Yeah, while we wait for the questions, Vijay, just one input here. In my experience, what I've seen is it's not really possible to target or chase after each and every metric that you see on the slide. You have to very wisely choose what will define success for you. If you're looking at activities and what is it that really matters to you, go back to your problem, ask that question why 5 times, and you will get the answer. If that's what you want to achieve, then you will know exactly what metrics you want to track for activity or the output or the impact that you're looking for. It ties back to what is the problem that you're trying to solve. And it's very likely that it's not going to be more than 4 or 5 on this slide.
Yeah. Good point, Aniket. I'm not suggesting you use all these. These are just examples of the types of metrics that fit into each category.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's move. Yeah.
Sure. I think this is one of our customer case studies. So let me talk about this customer. This is a managed services provider. This wasn't just any company. It's actually a company that specializes in making the world smaller through their translation, productivity, and management software. But ironically, they struggle with internal communication and strategic planning. So the story begins with their account managers chasing after a lot of contacts who do not have much influence. They're chasing after contacts who have influence as much as a penguin in the Sahara. And the company statuses the relationship statuses are so outdated. There's one mistake that they're trying to fix for some time now, which is the intel blind spots that they have on the customer. They have become a black hole now, which is swallowing every bit of their strategic insight for their key customers. And that's where they came to us. They're like, they're running this business, but they're just not able to grab all of these pieces together and put them together and put an account planning process. So that's where we started working with them, turning this entire pumpkin carriage into a pumpkin, then into a sleek high-speed train. And we saw that the first step that we took was defining clear goals and objectives in terms of what their North Star is. Then we had an initiating pilot program with them. We had clear definitions in terms of when do we say that this pilot or this POC is successful. And then this empowered the entire pilot team or the execution team for this pilot with so much confidence that they not just had a buy-in from the strategic leader or the executive sponsor, but also some of the key users or influencers within the user team who were willing to back this initiative because they experienced the account planning tool firsthand during the POC. And then they took the leap of faith in terms of rolling this out globally. What led to that is a magical increase in almost 1.8x of their increase in pipeline and almost 2x increase in their entire customer engagement. That, they were just imagining that this is something that we've been wanting to have, but a little room for enchantment for them that they were able to achieve this within a year's time because they're very diligent in terms of how they wanted to use this tool. They gave time for POC. They had a clear solution design. They knew exactly what they wanted to use. And then they had clear messaging. They had clear sponsorship from the top, which led to the success. We saw almost 70% of the account managers were on track in terms of creating the plans, which was, pulling off their team of unicorns where, in this world, if you're asking a sales or account manager to use another tool on their plate, the first thing that they're going to come with is 5 reasons why not to use it. And still we are able to achieve 70% of account plans or account managers using this for planning. This case study is kind of very pivotal in terms of how we've evolved as an account planning tool or a key account management platform, because that's a testament in terms of how and exactly what works when you're trying to implement an account management platform and what is it that you need to avoid. So just a quick snapshot of what were some of the successes and what are some of the problems that we are trying to solve and how we've been able to achieve that.
Thanks for summarizing that, Aniket. So, folks, if you do want to, see this later, so we can, please do write into us. We'll be sharing the email ID at the end of the presentation. So we'd be happy to share more about this implementation. But a question to Steve as well. Steve, in your vast experience and having worked with several enterprises across industries, what exactly are the usual results that you tend to see in, let's say, a specific time frame of a year or two, and how is that generally? What is the benchmark there? I'm sure there are enterprises, sales heads who are trying to understand how much time do I spend before I can expect results from the KAM program.
Yeah, I mean, I think given that it's key accounts, given that it often moves slowly, I think realistically you're looking at 6 to 9 months before you start to see positive results such as Aniket is describing here. But that then begins to build on itself, right? This is the kind of motion or muscle that the more you do it, the better you become at it. The better you become at it, the more results you see from it. So, these are not short-term investments. You're not going to roll a program like this out halfway through the quarter and magically impact the results for this quarter. But you should start to see potentially some results the following quarter and the quarter after that. And I think it becomes sort of a virtuous cycle if it's done well.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Just one closing note on this. This case study kind of serves as a reminder that with the right strategy and any organization that is trying to achieve this, if you plan this well, follow the process that Steve had mentioned with respect to the 4-stage process, and then the implementation plan that you've seen today, there are way less chances that this is going to fail unless there is lack of intent or lack of sponsorship on some of these initiatives, because these are very important from a change management standpoint. You need to have the right intent, and you need to have the right person driving this. So I think it's definitely achievable, and if you're trying to use a tool like Demand Farm, I think I'm just a shout away in terms of how we've done that for some of our customers. So you can feel free to reach out.
Well summed up. Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. Anika, I think that's a great lead into the final slide, and I'll keep it brief because I know we're running short on time. But I think when all is said and done, we're asking sellers and sales leaders to change behavior, to adopt a new technology, to adopt a new process. And a few years ago, I did some research into why people, particularly sellers, do or do not adopt a new process and a new technology. And, you can see the results of that here categorized into people influences, process influences, and the experience of using the technology. And a lot of this comes down to, as you outlined, Anika, executive leadership. There's a difference between a sponsor and an engaged leader. A sponsor says, you should go off and do this. An engaged leader or champion says, we are going to do this. I'm going to learn the tool as well. I'm going to participate in account reviews. We're going to use the account plans as part of our everyday engagements. We're going to build it into our sales management process. And that starts to create an advantage for the seller. And that's what a lot of this comes down to. Is the tool easy to use? Does it fit the job for which it was intended? Does the process meet the seller's needs? And are they able to see and realize the benefits that you just described, right? Is it meaningful for them? And when you can answer those questions in a positive way, now we start to get that repeatability, that scale that we've been talking about throughout all of this. So just a few thoughts on leading people towards this path of getting the benefits from this technology and from this approach to managing your key accounts.
Fantastic. Yeah. All right. So thanks, Steve. That kind of brings us to the last poll of the day. Would you like to get a personalized demo of Demand Farm? Would you like to experience our technology? Polls open. So please do send in your votes. We would love to do a personalized walkthrough depending on exactly your KAM maturity, where you are with respect to your KAM process. You might be just starting out with that, or you might be quite advanced. Maybe you're looking to tap into your long tail accounts. No matter what your stages, we are happy to give you a personalized walkthrough. All right. Let's close the poll. Thank you. And that kind of brings us to the end of this session. If you do have any other questions, please do post your questions to this ID that I've pulled up, sales@demandfarm.com. And before we close out, a quick note, an exciting new update. We've kind of brought together, crystallized our conversations with hundreds of organizations into one comprehensive ultimate guide, an evaluation guide for enterprises for the key account management tools. So go ahead and check out this guide, buyer's guide. The link is up on the chat window. Do check it out and tell us what you like, whether you like it, what are the interesting bits, and would you like to see anything else added to it. we have all our ears open on this. Also, thank you, Steve and Aniket for joining in. Huge thank you to both of you for your time. And probably we'll connect again on another webinar. Until then, this is Vijay, your hype man, signing off. Thank you, Steve. Aniket.
Thank you,
Thank
gentlemen.
you. It's been a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.